Good day, welcome. Today we'll be having a wee chat about Promising Young Woman and how it utilises pop music to manipulate genre. I would apologise for my poor camera and audio setup, but currently have a wee cold sore, so these poor visuals are all that's standing between you and her at the minute. Oh God, she's winking at me. Nah, just kidding. She keeps me company. Alright, grab yourself a wee cup of tea. Promising Young Woman. Let's get into it. Now, I love me a revenge film, specifically a female-oriented revenge film. When I was 10, Kill Bill was my main jam, and I thought I'd be Uma Thurman when I grew up. It's a pretty popular genre. You know, you've got films like Hard Candy, or The Brave One, or I Spit on Your Grave, or the aforementioned Kill Bill. And then you've got films in the female revenge genre that are also comedies, you know, like The Other Woman, or John Tucker Must Die, which are obviously able to be comedies because the subject matter lacks the same brutality that films like I Spit on Your Grave definitely possess. And while all those films have indisputably great attributes, none of them are quite like Promising Young Woman. And Emerald Fennell, what a star! She is steadfastly occupying the pulse point of so many moments. The second time watching the movie, I caught a wee cameo in it where she's given a YouTube makeup tutorial on how to create BJ lips. She just really gets the landscape, you know? So I'd been anticipating the release of this film for quite a while, ever since I first saw the trailer. And then the release kept getting pushed back because of you-know-who, Miss Worldwide Pandemic. So yeah, I kind of forgot about it, and then all these articles kind of popped up regarding Oscar buzz, and I was kind of surprised because I wasn't expecting it to be like an Oscar film. I thought it would just be like a fun wee thriller situation. But when I did see the movie, I was really pleasantly surprised because it just blew all my expectations straight out of the water. You know, everything from the aesthetic, which I greatly appreciate, a pastel colour theme like nobody's business, to the acting, to the casting, to the artful framing, to the subject matter. I heavily dug it all. But most of all, I was so impressed by the soundtrack because I have been waiting so long for a filmmaker to have the gumption to use a Paris Hilton song in the soundtrack for the longest time. The film was just so fresh in terms of what it did with genre, and of course a lot of well thought out attributes contributed to the film being able to be so genre fluid. But damn if the soundtrack wasn't one of the most aptly utilised tools to achieve this with. The film is a master of duality. This is elucidated from the get-go. The title appearing on the screen in bright pink dripping letters like Bleeding Barbie is one of the first of many signifiers of this. The aesthetic of the film, combined with the romantic comedy tones that are interlaced into the thriller-esque narrative that propels the story, serve to make the delivery of what this film is about regarding rage, trauma, and rape culture easier to digest than other films that feature these dark subject matters. Filtering these subjects through the relief provided by the comedic components of the film imbue it with a levity that is usually very absent from this type of story. It kind of makes you let your guard down as a viewer because it introduces a type of entertainment quality. You know, you're laughing, you're rooting for the romantic leads, and you're also angry and thinking, how the hell is society like this? And it's through this entertainment that the second part of the message, the anger and frustration, sinks in so easily. There's no outlandishly violent scenes of attack, for the most part, to scar you with, to beat you about the head with, or to proselytize a moralistic narrative with. I actually quite liked that the movie was aware of a movie's purpose to entertain its audience. More and more when it comes to difficult subject matters, we are being given these bleak tales that leave us utterly depressed. Promising Young Woman does not do that. While it is most certainly leaves audiences stewing on the issue the film deals with, you're not left feeling totally drained. In the absence of that drained feeling, I think there is more room and energy left for the audience to have their sense of empathy thoroughly activated. And empathy is super powerful. So in effect, Promising Young Woman's manipulation of genre is so refreshing because of the effect it leaves on the viewer. Because it exists as a dark comedy, a romantic comedy, a thriller, a bit of a horror film, a revenge movie, it exists as entertainment. And people like to be entertained. That's why we watch films, right? It's a film that, in my opinion, really doesn't take the audience for granted. So for a bit of a background on the soundtrack, I'll be referencing a Vulture article that had a chat with Susan Jacobs, that's the music supervisor of the film. She's also worked on stuff like Big Little Lies and I, Tonya and Little Miss Sunshine. And basically the article just looks about how the soundtrack came together. Quoting here, "When Susan Jacobs read the script for Promising Young Woman, she imagined something much darker than the pink and green candy-coated thriller that the movie eventually became. The tone and colour of what you see on screen belies the darkness of what is transpiring." I would say this is a fundamental point to every feature of the film, and that this point bled across so heavily to the soundtrack gives the whole thing this real finished uniformity. In regards to identity, even with all the blending, this film is very deliberate. Since this was a Sundance movie in 2020, they had to put it all together on the cheap. Fennell came in with a playlist of songs she had listened to while writing the project, largely built around recognisable pop songs, and Jacobs worked with her to find a way to replicate the feeling of what she was going for. Charlie XCX's song opens the film, and so commences Emerald Fennell's unification of entertainment and substance, of pastels and rot, of comedy and thriller, of harmless and dangerous, all done through the comedic tone of boys playing over the top of the slow-motion images of the dancing, gyrating crotches of men in suits. Starting off on this humorous note contradicts the darkness that comes with being in the midst of a sea of potential nice guys, the danger of which we come to learn about through Cassie's game of entrapment. Boys allows the starting picture to be a big one. The way that the song serves as an ode to boys, contrasted with images of grown-ass dudes partying, sets up a world wherein women do not only dream about men, but have nightmares about them as well. Which to me sets up perfectly a later moment in the film where the character Al Monroe says to Cassie, "It's every guy's worst nightmare being accused like that," to which Cassie responds, "Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?" You know when you're watching a film and you're into it and you're enjoying it, you're having a good time, and then like some moment will happen in the film that like teleports your interest in it from about like 80% to like 10,000 million percent. Well, for me that happened when Stars Are Blind came on. I just never thought that I would see a film that had like the gumption and self-assuredness to put a Paris Hilton song in it that didn't also have Paris Hilton in it. I thought it was so freaking cool. Referencing the Vulture article again. When Jacobs met with director Emerald Fennell, the filmmaker made clear her plan for the movie to involve a lot of pop songs, including and especially one classic by Paris Hilton, Stars Are Blind, which was a key part of Fennell's original script. I really appreciated someone that can appreciate that there's value in great pop songs, rather than being like, "I'm too hip and cliche," says Jacobs. The tiny budget we had went to Paris Hilton's song. It was great because it had sincerity to it. Nobody was making fun. It was about that character falling in love with a guy who was so confident in his masculinity that he felt comfortable enough to sing one of her favourite pop songs. The fact that the characters, like Fennell herself, really do like the song made it easier for Jacobs to persuade Hilton's label to let them sell it for the film. The scene where the song plays is the scene where Cassie and Ryan are in the pharmacy. The song comes on and Ryan starts singing along to it. Cassie's like, "Hold up, are you singing along to Paris Hilton right now?" And Ryan's like, "Damn straight I am," and then just basically proceeds to get more and more into it. And Cassie, super charmed by this, I mean how could you not be, gets into it with him. And it's a lovely bonding moment, both between the characters as well as between the audience and the characters. The song featuring in the film not only cooperates with the whole scheme to belie the darker components of the film with a pop shimmer, but also kind of incites an interrogation and subversion of what's considered cool and why people feel such a need to align with it, as well as the cultural proclivity to divide art into lower and higher forms. You know, like when Cassie asks Ryan, like, "Are you singing along to Paris Hilton right now?" Like, that implies that he should be so embarrassed. Because it's not generally, in regards to those who see themselves as having a sophisticated taste in music that is rigorously kept in check, seen as cool to be bopping along to Paris Hilton. No idea why, personally. But when we consider how we traditionally think of high and low art is delegated to those with a high taste, whereas low art is measured by its accessibility to the masses. There is a sort of intellectual classism at play that involves the high art party looking down on the low art party. When it comes to this song specifically, I think this is so true, but particularly as it pertains to female taste. No denying the song is super girly, and that doesn't mean it can only be liked by girls, of course. Girlier things have, blanket statement here, by and large been relegated to the realm of superficiality. I think the pastel girliness of the aesthetic plays right into this as well. It's like a dare. Hey, I'm appearing all pastel-laden and harmless. But writing it off as superficial doesn't mean it is superficial. It can also mean that the misdirect worked. You were fooled by the wolf in sheep's clothing. You missed the depths it contains. Now, that isn't to say that Stars Are Blind contains a secreted wellspring of intellectual depth, but it is to say that liking the song doesn't diminish intellect or make a person superficial either. In fact, assuming a person is superficial because of a pop song they like is itself kinda superficial. And that's why I think this scene and its use of this song left such an impression on me, because it doesn't give two sugars about whether it's being perceived as cool or not. It's not trying too hard, it's having a good time, it's having fun, and fun is the gun. And in terms of genre, this is where the full rom-com part of it comes in really strongly, because we're given a full couple montage, ladies and gents. And you're like, wait, was Cassie not just prowling the night for douchebag nice guys, or letting the dean of her former university think her daughter was in danger, or letting a former friend of hers think she'd been assaulted, or smashing in some dude's windscreen? Wait, she's Julia Roberts now? What? But all these depressing films out there that stay depressing from start to finish in a bid to be more true to life, what I think they miss is the point that Promising Young Woman really hits on the head through its play with genre, is that not all of most lives are depressing or happy or funny or tragic or maddening or lonely. It's all a mix of all of it, And so in that sense, even though Promising Young Woman is so stylistic, it kind of is true to life in that way through its play with genre. In this more Julia Roberts side of Cassie, it just kind of serves to give more depth to her character. A crucial part of the film's score is an instrumental cover of Toxic, put together by composer Anthony Willis. Using the Britney Spears version of the song would have been very expensive, and, as Jacobs pointed out, distracting. But the slowed down string cover of the song's riffs could do the job well for the moment where Cassie launches her revenge scheme finale. There wasn't a place for the song Toxic, but the feeling of that surprise of what it does in that scene was crucial there, she said. That riff is a really recognizable part of that song, so you almost don't need any other part of the song. I agree. I reckon the Britney version of Toxic would have been a bit distracting, and I think this strings thriller-esque version of the song represents a paradigm for the artful manipulation of genre that's conducted throughout the film. We all know the song. She's instantly recognizable. But then we're ingesting it through this thriller-esque version that seems to be a reference to Psycho in terms of its effect. The way the version of the song plays with genre in terms of the pop and thriller components echoes the way that the film plays with genre with the comedy and thriller components. There are little bits of these tension-filled strings sprinkled throughout the film, like when Cassie's writing down a new name of one of the douchebags in her notebook. And it's kind of Lynchian in its effect, because when you combine it with the film's overall aesthetic, you get the impression that despite the quaintness on the surface, there's a darkness that resides just beneath. And you glimpse the dark underbelly, both in terms of the culture attitudes regarding assault and in regards to Cassie and all that rage. By the time the riff plays in the film, when Cassie is in her nurse garb, there's no hope left for the romantic comedy to make a reappearance. We are at a point of no return. Chapter 4 blinks on screen. Reminds me of how Kill Bill was in chapters 2. She's walking up to the cabin in dark, ominous woods, made more ominous by the strings of Toxic playing over it. Something dangerous is about to happen. This is when the impression of the revenge genre really peaks. If we weren't so acquainted with Cassie at this point, she could almost be the villain in a horror film on her way to wreak havoc. Alright, spoiler alert for this part. You've been warned. Spoiler alert. Warned. So Juice Newton's banger acts as the background music for the film's satisfying apotheosis, and it's the final point that I needed to be left feeling like the film that I just watched was awesome. But I was pretty bummed that Cassie had to die. I felt like it was a bit of a waste, like a bit unnecessary. I felt like there was definitely a way around that ending. I would have loved to see her walk away from the wreckage unscathed. But look, at the end of the day, it's her choice. It's Fennell's choice. And I guess as long as she saw it as a really worthwhile cause to die for, then that's her choice, you know. You do you, Cassie, you do you. There is a quote of Fennell's saying that Cassie is cavalier with her life for her cause. So again, you know, that just comes down to the character and their choice. But whatever. I got to listen to Juice Newton, so it's fine. It's not fine. But in using music, once again, to play with genre tropes, there is a finalization of how refreshing Fennell's take on the revenge genre is, as she gives us catharsis in the dudes being arrested, comedy in how stupid Al Monroe's buddy looks while running away, and almost a celebratory sense that in some ways karma might be real, particularly if there is someone as meticulous as Cassie around to give it a nudge. The way the scene plays out, coupled with the song, once again confirms that Fennell wants her audience to be entertained, and that it's not solely a film about delivering a message, which I think ultimately makes the message more absorbable. Thank you so much for watching my video. My tea is a bit of an iced tea now, unfortunately. It'd be lovely if you subscribe, or I wouldn't object to you following this channel's Instagram and my music Instagram, which I'll link below. You know, I'll allow it. I will allow it. But yes, have a lovely day, guys. Have a lovely, lovely day. And au revoir from me and my cold sore. Have a good one.